So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. So guys, a lot of people are talking about the 168-pound division. A lot of people are looking for that guy that they think that can beat Canelo at 168. Who's the guy? Who's the guy? Obviously, Canelo's beat Callum Smith. He's beat Billy Joe. Everyone's thinking, who is there? Who is there? And a name keeps coming up. A name keeps coming up at 168 that people want to see Canelo fight. And it's not even Plant. A lot of people not giving Plant much of a chance. It's David Benavidez. A lot of people think that David Benavidez is the only threat and the threat that can beat Canelo Alvarez. A lot of people think that David Benavidez is that guy that's going to beat Canelo Alvarez. They think David Benavidez is a very, very dangerous guy with his lanky frame, tall guy, very big at the weight. Lack discipline. You know, he's he could have been a champion right now, but he lost his belt on the weight on the scale, and unfortunately that probably cost him the Canelo fight. You know, he's been saying that Canelo didn't want to fight him when he was champion, but when he got the belt got stripped off him, he quickly took that belt fighting Yildirim or whatever, or fighting Smith. It got put on the line fighting Smith. But let's not forget, a lot of people thought that Canelo Alvarez was ducking Smith. All this rubbish about Canelo ducking. Like, Canelo doesn't duck anyone. Canelo would fight anyone. I think Canelo's goal was to become undisputed. Canelo looked at the 168-pound division and he thought, you know what, there's an opportunity here for me to, firstly, to create history by being the first Mexican to become undisputed. And Ramirez could have, to be honest, Ramirez could have done that, but he lost to Josh Taylor. So Canelo thought to himself, it's an opportunity at the 168-pound division. I do think Canelo thought the 168-pound division was weak, and he probably looked at the middleweight division and thought it's a lot tougher. But Canelo wanted to have that achievement of becoming undisputed, and he looked at the 168-pound division and thought, you know what, I could go through that division and I could go through it quickly. And he's almost done it. He's one belt away. Against Callum Smith, he basically, Benavidez got stripped, and it's Benavidez's fault, because if he didn't get stripped, if Canelo wanted to become undisputed, he would have had to fight Benavidez. But because Benavidez got stripped, the WBC put that fight on the line, put that belt on the line when Canelo fought Smith. And then that fight was for the WBC and the WBA, I believe. And Canelo obviously won that fight against Smith, and he became a unified super middleweight champion. Then obviously, he fought Yildirim, who was his mandatory, beat Yildirim, and then, he fought Billy Joe, who was the WBO super middleweight champion, and then he beat Billy Joe. He's now holds 3 of the belts, and now the only belt he's got left is the IBF. So I really think David Benavidez, is probably kicking himself right now, because Canelo would have had to go through him if he had the WBC belt, if Canelo wanted to become undisputed. So David Benavidez, by the lack of discipline, cost him, mega millions. And listen, he may not get a Canelo fight, because Canelo, after fighting Plant, may decide to go up to light heavyweight and take on Beterbiev, may go down to middleweight and fight a Charlo or Andre or a Golovkin. Sorry, guys. Oh, I've been up long, yeah, but sorry about that, guys. I've just been up very long, tired. But yeah, I think Benavidez will be kicking himself, because once Canelo becomes undisputed, if he becomes undisputed, because let's not disrespect Plant like that, he's a good fighter. But if Canelo was, to win, he would be a favorite against Plant. If he was to come up and beat Plant and become undisputed, Canelo has options. Then, for me, Canelo's done what he's wanted to do by creating history. The problem is Benavidez is not part of that history. And what I mean is, he could have been. Because Benavidez, if he didn't lose the belt, like I said, Canelo would have had to fight him if he wanted to become undisputed. What's happened now is Canelo doesn't need to fight Benavidez. Once he fights Plant, because Plant, let's be honest, isn't going to fight anybody else apart from Canelo now. Plant's not going to give Benavidez a shot, because if you're Plant, why would you fight Benavidez when that's a risky fight, when you're going to make like, we all know that Caleb Plant wants $10 million to fight Canelo. You're not going to get a fraction of that to fight Benavidez, and it's a very tough fight, a fight that you could lose. So you're going to fight Canelo for all the marbles and money, legacy, everything's on the line here. Plant can, if he wins, he's not just going to bag a huge payday, then he's going to get another big payday. And then also imagine what that does for his reputation, legacy, and all of that. So for me, personally, I think that's obviously a fight that I think Caleb Plant's going to have. So Benavidez is, if Canelo was to beat Caleb Plant, become undisputed, then Canelo makes the decision. Canelo can fight whoever he wants. And Benavidez might not get his chance because there's Charlo, there's Andre, there's Golovkin, you know, there's Beterbiev, there's Bivol, and then obviously there'll be Benavidez. But that's 6 guys that potentially Canelo can fight. So Benavidez, like I said, could have been in a position where Canelo, if he wanted to be undisputed, had to go through him. But because of the fact that, you know, Benavidez did what he did and lacked discipline, didn't make weight, he ended up getting stripped. But otherwise, Benavidez could have been in a great position where Canelo would have had no choice but to fight him. Whereas now, once Canelo becomes undisputed, he would have created history. And if he goes and fights Beterbiev or Bivol, a lot of people would look at those fights as a step up from Benavidez. They would look that that's a more dangerous fight. They'd think that those guys are better fighters. So they'd look at those guys as a step up. Canelo going up and fighting them. I think Andre, Charlo, Benavidez, they're kind of similar level fights. But if he was to go up and fight Beterbiev and Bivol, then they'd be seen as more dangerous fights, and people think they're better fighters and they have a chance of beating Canelo. So for me, Benavidez may not get that fight. There's a chance. I know there's a lot of people that want to see him fight Benavidez, but Benavidez might not get that chance. Because like I just said to you, Canelo is going to have, once he becomes undisputed, he's going to have a lot of options on the table. And all those options are possibly bigger financially than the Benavidez fight. You'd probably say Charlo fight maybe bigger financially, Andre possibly, Golovkin definitely, Beterbiev for me definitely, and Bivol for me definitely. I think they would be more lucrative fights. And also from a legacy standpoint, if he goes and fights a Beterbiev, that does way more for his legacy. Way more for his legacy than a Benavidez fight. But like I said, if Benavidez was still a WBC champion and didn't, like I said, lose his belt on the scale, he would have been in a position where Canelo. Because I know Benavidez says, when I was a WBC champion, Canelo didn't want no part. He didn't want to fight me. Canelo at that point, you know, I don't know what, I can't remember when Benavidez held the belt, whether Canelo was at 168. May have been. But Canelo has now made it known that he wants to become undisputed. And let's not forget, right, I know people are going to say, well, the reason why Canelo, because Benavidez got stripped and he knew it was an easy road. Otherwise, if Benavidez was still a champion, he wouldn't go for the undisputed, or he wouldn't. That's a load of nonsense. Because a lot of people said the same thing about Callum Smith. A lot of people thought Callum Smith was tall, rangy, and a problem. And then he beats him, and then, oh, Callum Smith is no good. Saunders, oh, he's a tricky southpaw. He beats him, oh, Saunders was never that good. People say that all the time about Canelo. Canelo never gets the credit. But let's not beat around the bush. When the Canelo-Callum Smith fight got made, and before, you know, there was talks that Callum Smith is dangerous, his height, his strength, size could be a problem against Canelo, and Canelo made it look easy. Same with Billy Joe. People thought that his style, Canelo struggles against that style, beats him, and then everyone's like, oh, well, Billy Joe wasn't that good. Like, it's just, you can't win if you're Canelo. You can't win. The fact of the matter is Canelo is an elite fighter. He fights everybody. And to be honest with you, I think when I believe he will become undisputed, I believe that Canelo will fight whoever. Canelo will fight the best. I don't think Canelo's afraid of fighting the best. Canelo will fight the top dog. He will fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Canelo goes after Beterbiev or Bivol. And in that case, that's why someone like Benavidez now is in a difficult spot, because Canelo can trump the Benavidez fight. He could fight someone more dangerous, or someone seen as more of a danger than someone like Benavidez, like a Bivol, like a Beterbiev. Because nobody would say, if Canelo goes and fights Beterbiev, no one will say, oh, well, Canelo's ducking Benavidez because he'd be fighting someone more dangerous. Same way that no one could say that if he fights Bivol, because Bivol's a champion at the weight class above. So no, this is what I mean. Canelo's now in a great position because Canelo, he can trump that Benavidez fight, where Benavidez might not get that shot because, like, I don't feel like Charlo, Andre, Benavidez, all of these guys are going to be able to face Canelo, because I do think there's going to be a limited amount of fights of how many fights Canelo's going to have before he decides to go. So, to be honest with you, I do think some of those guys will miss out, especially if Canelo goes up to light heavyweight. If Canelo goes up to light heavyweight, then who knows? Canelo might want to push the boundaries, especially if he beats those light heavyweights, guy. He may want to push the boundaries further. You don't know what Canelo might want to do. I definitely think that if I was him, I would definitely go to light heavyweight, you know, and try to maybe clean up there. You know, because once a fighter goes up, I think coming down is a problem. I do. I don't think a fighter should come down, you know, once he moves up, because I think it becomes harder to make the weight. Because I'm pretty sure Canelo's probably walking around at probably 180, 185 possibly. So I think coming back down to 160 may be a bit of an issue for him. And let's be honest, he's been champion at 160. He doesn't need to prove anything there. If he goes and cleans up at 175, which is a possibility again, because like I said, Beterbiev, I believe, is a unified champion. And then there's Bivol and I think Joe Smith. Those are very winnable fights for him. Those are very winnable fights for Canelo Alvarez. Very winnable fights. I definitely think he beats Bivol and Joe Smith for me. I think he does it quite comfortably. I think the fight that I think obviously would be the tough one would be Beterbiev. So if I was Canelo, I would definitely go to light heavyweight, because imagine if he was to clean out the light heavyweight division. Imagine what that does for his legacy, like, and he could do it. He could do it. So this is why I think Benavidez, although Benavidez is shouting out the fight, calling out Canelo, I don't know whether Benavidez is going to get that fight, because I do think Canelo may dare to be great. He may go out to light heavyweight and say, you know what, let me look to create history by, you know, becoming an undisputed light heavyweight champion, being undisputed in 2 different weight classes. You know, it wouldn't put it past you, would it, Canelo doing something like that? But I think Canelo wants to become undisputed for the history. So like Josh Taylor's become undisputed. Some of the fighters of the past, he just wants to create history. I think Canelo is now, it's not all about the money. It's about creating history. It's about doing things that are great. And I think by him becoming an undisputed champion, like I said, he'd be being great, right? He'd be doing something that's, again, putting himself up there when it comes to legendary fighters and legendary status. He'd be putting himself right up there, right? So that's what Canelo wants to do, and I think by becoming undisputed at 168, he'd achieve that goal. And then I think, you know, I personally think he should look for the big legacy fights, which, you know, would add to his legacy even further. And Beterbiev, Bivol at light heavyweight, maybe that, or maybe he goes down to middleweight. You know, but like I said, I don't know whether, you know, with the weight situation, I'm not sure it's smart to go back down to 160, you know, especially when, you know, Canelo's been at 168 for a while now. Is he gonna be all right? The way I know he's not a big 160, and he's definitely not a big 168. But again, you know, you've been fighting at 168, then having to cut weight and go back down. You know, we don't know how his body's gonna react. And I personally think he should stay 168 and probably have a couple more fights at 175. I think he can beat most of the champions I think he can beat all of the champions at 175. That's why I think I would love to see him fight. But let's see what he decides to do. I definitely think there's no stopping him becoming undisputed. But you know, I'm pretty sure Caleb Plant will have something to say about that. Caleb Plant is a good fighter, and I rate Caleb Plant. But I just think Canelo's in a great space right now, great moment. He's got the momentum, and I think it's going to be very difficult for anyone to beat him. But leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. Let me know what you think. Is Benavidez the only threat at 168? What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.